If there was one setup move most synonymous with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet never used, it would be Quiver Dance. Well, how much Pokemon have we had to ban that learn Quiver Dance? I think it's like 5. But that's not what we're talking about today. Instead, we're going to talk about the second setup move most synonymous with Scarlet and Violet in you, and that is COIL. Throughout the entirety of this metagame, the entire 6 months that it's been around, COIL has been at the forefront of competitive play. There has always been 1 or 2, or in this case 3, very, very, very dominant COIL sweepers, and we're going to talk about them today because I think it's very interesting, especially given one of these Pokemon, which one it is, to see it become so good because of COIL, and I think this just goes to show the common theme with this generation, that being bulky setup sweepers are king. Now, if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We do this daily, along with Pokemon Showdown Lives. And if you're already subscribed, well, join as a member. Then you get more content. It isn't that incredible. Just, leave a like, a comment. Maybe get your sibling to subscribe. Anyhow, I think we have to talk about Eelektross first. This is one of the Pokemon that, near the beginning of the generation, was getting a lot of calls to be banned. COIL Eelektross was viewed as, to put it lightly, BS. It's a mon that felt like it could take over games with very little needed to go its way. Something that people commonly would talk about is COIL Eelektross being able to somehow end up at like under half, all of a sudden get one switch forced, get a COIL up, and then somehow it finishes the game at near full health. And the reason it took off is pretty simple. Sandaconda. This is one of the best Pokemon in earlier metas at taking advantage of Sandaconda, particularly because at COIL Eelektross' apex, Rotom was still not very common yet. Rotom was starting to kinda creep up in usage, but back then we still had like the viability list, so it was just, high viability, medium, low viability. I think at the top we had like super something like that. And at the time Rotom was down in like low viability, only running these pretty suboptimal utility sets. So Eelektross was the premier Sandaconda abuser, and as a result, it was getting spammed everywhere. I'm so sorry for coughing in your ear, but my throat was getting really unhappy. And it's pretty obvious to see why. At the time, Sandaconda wasn't running Stone Edge at all, very rarely, so it was literally just free setup. You switch this guy in, you COIL up, and, at the time, there weren't really a lot of mons that could stop you. We're thinking about what was actually trying to deal with you, right? It's like, maybe you faced a Scarf Rotom at the time, which were very uncommon. More commonly than not, it was people using something like a Passimian with Terra Fighting, and they just tried to brute force their way through you. There was a decent shot that they could, but if that failed, a lot of the time people were just going to be getting rolled. This mon forced you to take such terrible trades just trying to overwhelm it. And it's not that simple, I guess is the best way I could put it. Because you have Drain Punch, and Eelektross has a very fun defensive utility. It literally has no weaknesses. It's an electric type with Levitate. And so, nothing was really forcing you out, and even with the stats not being particularly exemplary by any means, they're pretty fine for in-use standards, and by being able to force out foes like Sandaconda, at the time Oricorio Pom-Pom, even other flying types like Vivillon, you can force out. Jolteon wasn't something that really wanted to trade with you, because it was never going to be able to go for its Terra Ice, as you just would Drain Punch it and get all your health back. This mon literally defined an entire meta. The only reason it never got banned is because we had the rise of Scarf Rotom, and in general just Rotom sets that could give this mon a lot of hassle. But more importantly, Sandaconda, as a COIL sweeper, at a point also started ticking up in usage, and to this day remains one of the better ones in the tier. And it's kind of interesting too, because there have been a lot of meta adaptations to Sandaconda, and both because of its necessity, but also just because of its adaptability, it's remained relevant throughout all of them. So, think about maybe around like May time. COIL Conda really ticked up there. And a big part of this is when Rotom started spiking in usage, and of course, even with Eelektross remaining high usage, people kind of started understanding, alright, I cannot have this Pokemon that everyone wants to counter team be so easily exploited by certain Pokemon. You know, I don't want Rotom and Eelektross to just switch in and just do whatever. So, these sets with Glare, Stealth Rock, Earthquake, Rest kind of started falling off because, yeah, I mean, they're just not that effective anymore. And at a point, people were saying, alright, I dropped Glare for a Rock move, I can at least get some damage. But then people realized, hey, you know, we got other mons that learn Stealth Rock, you know, we got Chansey around, we had Copperajah for a bit. Nowadays, you know, we got Blissey, we got Bombardier at a point. Hey, what if we just ran COIL Sandaconda? Because we've seen it with Eelektross. Sandaconda is already free to put on a team because it does so many things so well, and it's got better recovery with Rest plus Shed Skin. So what if we just ran this instead? And to no one's surprise, it was incredible. Of course, the big thing here too, Sandaconda being able to deal with just about every other bulky setup sweeper unless it gets some really bad hacks. Because with Terra Fairy, they can't Dragon Tail you, and you can just coil up in front of them. So the Dunsparce wasn't gonna get through unless it lucked you, and you even have Shed Skin for its Body Slam para. Eelektross was just not beating you because it's not doing enough damage, and since Stone Edge already has a naturally high crit rate, you had really good odds there. And if we want to talk about a more recent Pokemon, Bulk Up Grimmsnarl doesn't even really reliably beat this, unless it gets lucky. Because not only is it slower, but it's gonna be taking Helmet Chip, it could never maintain a sub. It was just a very bad option to trade with, and since Sandaconda so commonly runs Terra Fairy anyway, there's that chance that its strongest move wasn't even going to do damage to you. And of course, at a point, this set, you know, we start seeing more grass types pop up. You know, there's a Lurantis, there's Appleton, both of these, even like certain Pokemon Terra Grass became a little bit more relevant. And so you may be thinking, alright, well, how'd Sandaconda survive this? Surely it didn't. Well, you fool. Absolute buffoon. I'll introduce you to Dragon Rush. So Sandaconda, this was really when Appleton picked up in usage, mostly, because Appleton does otherwise just sit on Sandaconda. You started running Dragon Rush with Terra Dragon, and you literally one-shot Appleton with one boost, I believe. Maybe it needs, like, Hazard Chip, but you just smash it. And because of Coil, it can't even miss. It gave you an even stronger move to hit Rotom with, because you have Stab. Same with Eelektross, even stronger. Also, it can flinch. So there's a little bit of cheesing potential, too, in the mirror matchup. And it's still neutral versus something like Lurantis. It gives you, as well, a resistance to grass, a resistance to water, because you're going Terra Dragon. So it's very practical from a defensive standpoint, too. Yeah, now they can Dragon Tail phase you out. But hey, you live and you learn. It's a matter of taking a trade-off, and by that point, Eelektross was kind of slowly starting to get less and less good. That's when you had people saying, alright, I don't think it's necessarily top 3 anymore. Maybe it's like top 5 or 6. So it was already starting to lose the, you know, negatives that came with it. And now lastly, a Pokemon that recently was banned as of today I'm recording this. It got banned yesterday, but this is going up a week later. At the beginning of NUPL, the Dunsparce with Coil really shot out of nowhere. People kind of... I remember when we were doing VR updates, and the viability thread, we ended up actually having the Dunsparce drop to, like, A rank instead of A+. Because Calm Mind sets were not really viewed as that incredible. Like, everyone acknowledged, yeah, these sets could take over games, they just run into more bad matchups than they used to. And right at that time, people were like, alright, well, what if I just ran Coil instead? Because it's made 2 other Pokemon look absurdly broken. May as well try it on a 3rd. And I mean, this one has the ability Serene Grace, which everyone knows this ability is just complete bull to deal with. I mean, this, I don't know why it's still allowed in competitive. But people start running this onto Dunsparce. And yeah, it turns out this is still really good. And that's for more than just the reason of Coil being really ridiculous in this generation, but also because you have a specially defensive normal type, and that just provides more utility than one with physical bulk. I mean, even scrolling down the list right now, and of course this is relevant for this meta enough, back then we had a couple others too, like Zoroark for example. You know, you Terra Fairy on that, now it's free setup fodder. But, like, you could set up on something like an Appleton, a little, not the best, but you could try to, at least if it's, like, not looking to Apple Acid spam you if it locks into something else. You could take a hit from Clawitzer in a pinch. You could take a hit from, say, like, Pyroar in a pinch, or, like, Magneton, or even Mesprit. It gives you a little bit more leverage, because there's more Pokemon you'd switch a specially defensive normal type into than a physically defensive normal type. Like, if we think about what the most common physical attackers have been in you this generation, there's, like, Bruxish, yeah, but a lot of the other ones were just fighting types. Like, Medicham, you got Passimian, you got Hisuian Sneasel, you got Toxicroak. Like, these aren't mons you want to try and deal with anyway. And sure, I mean, the Calm Mind set ran Terra Ghost, so it wasn't a bad matchup. It's just a lot harder to navigate before you use your Terra. And, you know, it's not like we didn't see adjustments to this to Dunsparce, right? I mean, we still had Rotom running around, doing the same stuff that it did for, you know, neutering Electros. Same with Sandaconda. Coil sets were still good at giving this issues, and like we mentioned too, with Shedskin, you could actually kind of deal with the Serene Grace paralysis a little bit better. And even just ghost types, like, whether it's something with Terra Ghost, like maybe a Cacturne or an Articuno, whether it's, say, oh, I had it in my head, and then it went away. Oh, this is a Drifblim. Good thing it was right here. Ghost types can also come in, because, you know, it's just not body slamming you ever. If it has to Dragon Tail you, then that's a lot, you know, less bad. And a lot of these ghost types have a way to cripple it, whether it's like Cacturne encoring you into Coil, or Roost even, whether it's Drifblim going for Will-O-Wisp or spamming Strength Sap. Whether it's like Rotom, I mean, literally Rotom's a natural ghost type, but we talked about Will-O-Wisp, Trick, all great ways to cripple the Dunsparce. Oh, you naive, you poor naive child. Yeah, so then they started doing this, and that's kind of when we all knew this mon wasn't being saved. Because why am I getting poisoned 60% of the time? Please tell me. Explain why am I dealing with this? So did this person run Poison Jab a little bit? Because Terra Poison, think about it. With Fairy Terra, you still run the risk of getting reamed by Croak and Hisuian Sneasel. So no matter what, you're kind of at a risk of getting beat by them. But Terra Poison's not. They ain't beating you. So not only does it help versus the most common fighting types, because Medicham isn't really relevant anymore, it still helps you versus Poros if you care about that mon, but also, now you actually have a way to better deal with ghost types, and conveniently, a lot of those natural ghost types Terra into fairy types frequently. So you even have a super effective move for them. Isn't it great? If they think you're Dragon Tail, you can pick up a poison type instead and say, no, 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 no. Just beat them down that way. And that's really the history of Coil. Only one of these Pokemon ever ended up getting banned, but to say, you know, we cannot ignore the calls that Electros had for being banned, or that Sandaconda to this day remains the best Pokemon in the format by a mile. It is crazy. Terastallizing with bulky setup moves, just simply strong. Bulky Pokemon in general are probably the best users of this new mechanic, especially if they can set up. And we even look at OU, King Gambit, Zamazenta. I'd say Baxcalibur, but that's not really bulky unless you're talking about, like, snow stuff. But I hope y'all enjoyed this. Shoutouts never used, gotta be my favorite tier ever. And, yeah, I mean, we'll probably have another video talking about Quiver Dance one day. Although I've already done that, so maybe not. Hope y'all enjoyed, though. As I said, leave a like if you did, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I will see you in the next video. Peace.